Imagine the murmur of a candlelit court, the soft rustle of silk, and the intense gaze of a young queen who holds not just a crown, but the hopes and dreams of an entire nation in her hands. Now, imagine that same queen, barely out of her teens, caught in a web of scandal, political intrigue, and betrayal. Her every move under scrutiny, her very life teetering on the edge of survival. This is the tumultuous life of Mary, Queen of Scots, a queen whose story reads like a Shakespearean tragedy. Love, betrayal, ambition, and death. Mary Stuart, Queen of Scots, is remembered as one of the most captivating and tragic figures of the 16th century, a life defined by scandal, political intrigue, and personal tragedy. Her name has been etched in history for her beauty, her rivalries, and her tumultuous reign. Her dramatic story begins with her sudden ascent to the throne at just 6 days old, after her father's death. Yet her story is not just one of royalty. It is a tale of ambition, betrayal, and ultimately a tragic downfall that would end in an execution that shook Europe. Mary's early life set the stage for her later struggles. Born on December 8th, 1542 at Linlithgow Palace, Mary was the only surviving child of King James V of Scotland and Marie de Guise. Her father's sudden death thrust her into a dangerous political landscape as the Queen of Scotland at just days old. The young queen became a pawn in the power struggles between Scotland, France, and England. At the tender age of 5, she was sent to France, where she was betrothed to Francis the Dauphin, the future King Francis II. Mary was raised in the French court, where she was educated in music, poetry, and statecraft, becoming a refined and cultured princess, though perhaps too sheltered for the ruthless politics that awaited her upon her return to Scotland. In 1558, at the age of 15, Mary married Francis, becoming Queen of France when he ascended the throne as Francis II in 1559. However, her happiness was short-lived. Francis died in 1560, leaving Mary a widow at the age of 18. This tragic loss marked the first of many heartbreaks in her life. After his death, Mary returned to Scotland in 1561, where she was faced with a kingdom in turmoil. Scotland had recently undergone a Protestant Reformation led by the fiery preacher John Knox, and Mary's Catholicism placed her at odds with the Protestant majority in her country. Her return to Scotland was fraught with political tension as she attempted to reconcile her Catholic faith with the Protestant forces that were gaining power. Mary's reign in Scotland was marked by constant political turmoil and rebellion. Her claim to the English throne, which she inherited from her Tudor bloodline, only added fuel to the fire. Queen Elizabeth I of England, her cousin, saw Mary as a threat to her own reign, and the tension between the two monarchs was palpable. Despite the political challenges, Mary was a determined ruler, trying to balance the demands of her Catholic supporters with the Protestant factions that were increasingly vocal in Scotland. But her French upbringing and her tendency to favor Catholicism alienated many of her subjects, who viewed her as out of touch with the realities of the Scottish Reformation. However, it was her personal life that would spark the greatest scandals and ultimately lead to her downfall. Mary's first marriage to Henry Stuart, Lord Darnley, in 1565, was meant to strengthen her claim to the English throne, as Darnley was a Catholic cousin with Tudor blood. Initially, the marriage appeared promising, but it quickly soured. Darnley became increasingly arrogant and drunken, and their relationship deteriorated. The infamous murder of David Rizzio, Mary's Italian secretary, in 1566, carried out in her presence by Darnley and other nobles, further tainted her reign. Darnley's own murder in February 1567, under mysterious circumstances, cast a dark shadow over Mary. His house was blown up, and his body was found strangled nearby, fueling rumors that Mary was complicit in his death. Although the evidence was circumstantial, her hasty remarriage and lack of public morar into fensagning her zal for Bauerdinger Hermar made her a suspect. Just months after Darnley's death, Mary married James Hepburn, Earl of Bothwell, in a union that would scandalize Europe. Bothwell, who was widely believed to have been involved in Darnley's murder, had allegedly abducted Mary, though whether it was consensual remains debated. The marriage caused an uproar, and many of Mary's nobles rebelled against her, accusing her of being an adulteress and a murderer. Mary was imprisoned at Lochleven Castle, where she miscarried twins and was forced to abdicate in favor of her son, James the Duke of Scotland, in July 1567. She was only 24 years old. Mary fled to England in 1568, hoping for Elizabeth's protection, but instead she was imprisoned for 19 years. Her time in England was a constant struggle, as she became a rallying point for Catholic conspirators who sought to overthrow Elizabeth. The Ridolfi Conspiracy of 1571 and the Babington Plot of 1586 both aimed to place Mary on the English throne, but her direct involvement in these plots remains unclear. The casket letters, which were purportedly love letters between Mary and Bothwell, were used as evidence to accuse her of complicity in Darnley's murder. However, the authenticity of these letters has been widely questioned, and the conspiracy theories surrounding her only added to her tragic narrative. Mary's final years were marked by a sense of hopelessness and isolation, stripped of her freedom, and held in castles such as Sheffield and Fotheringhay. She spent her days embroidering, writing poetry, and clinging to her Catholic faith. Her health deteriorated, and she became increasingly frail, suffering from rheumatism and the weight of her past decisions. Her greatest tragedy came when, in 1586, she was convicted of treason for her involvement in the Babington Plot and sentenced to death by Elizabeth. After months of delay, Mary was executed on February 8, 1587, at Fotheringhay Castle. She faced her death with remarkable composure, dressed in crimson to signify her martyrdom, and was beheaded in a gruesome execution that required 3 blows of the axe. The scene was made all the more poignant by the presence of her dog, which reportedly hid in her skirts, mourning her death. Mary, Queen of Scots, remains one of the most tragic and controversial figures in history. To some, she was a romantic martyr, a queen undone by her own passion and the treachery of those around her. To others, she was a reckless ruler whose personal decisions and political missteps led to her downfall. Yet, her legacy endures, in part due to the enduring appeal of her story and the dramatic events of her life. Though her son, James VI of Scotland, eventually ascended the English throne as James I, uniting the crowns of Scotland and England in 1603, Mary's dream of ruling both kingdoms was never realized in her lifetime. Instead, her life became a tragic tale of loss, betrayal, and an untimely death that still captivates the imagination.